Hello, everybody. Welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. I am your host, Matt Connarton, here for the final Matt Connarton Unleashed television edition of 2015. So wonderful to have you all with me. Like I said, the final television edition of 2015. The radio edition of the show will continue unabated. There will be a show Christmas night, Christmas Eve, so forth. We continue to do that 5 nights a week at 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1, which you can find at ipmnation.com, one of our 2 live stations. Can't promise the Christmas Eve show will be live. I'll probably pre-tape the Christmas Eve radio edition. But there will be a new show, and we'll make it available via podcast, so you don't have to listen. You don't have to spend your, final hour of Christmas Eve listening to me. But so it'll probably go up early in the day. But and then Christmas night, I'll be back live for our Friday night show. Christmas night, it doesn't, at a certain point on Christmas Day, it stops feeling like Christmas, at least to me. Maybe it's just my perception of things. Maybe it has something to do with how just Christmas, how it worked when I was a kid. But to me, Christmas was always, Christmas Eve and then Christmas morning. And then by the time you get to like late afternoon, early evening on the 25th, to me anyway, feels like Christmas is already done. Once the sun goes down on Christmas Day, it's like, Christmas is pretty much wrapped up. You know what I mean? Or unwrapped because of the presents, but a little pun there. But we'll do a live show on IPM Nation 1 Christmas night for sure. And by the time I get done, because that goes 11 to midnight, by the time the show's done, it won't even be Christmas anymore. So that will continue. And then the week of New Year's, there will be no television edition. So we'll be off for a week. It'll be a repeat that week or whatever. And then we're right back to it. So a new live show 51 weeks out of the year for the television edition. And the radio show will continue unabated. I'll be on the air New Year's Eve. I don't care about New Year's. Means nothing to me. So I've never been much for marking time. To me, it's just another click of the odometer, So all 2016 means to me is, election year. But I don't care about the New Year's Eve holiday. So I'll just do a normal show that night. So anyway, but if you are watching live on Wednesday, I can tell you that on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades later, Gary has planned for us what's become a tradition on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades every year. He has the pastor at his church, Bob McKenna, come in, and that's always nice. And I enjoy seeing Bob. Nice guy. I am particularly, I will say, I think it was last Christmas, might have even been the year before, I'm not sure, our Christmas show on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, when, I was talking about how I personally, as someone who is very committed to the idea of separation of church and state, I don't want religion being taught in school, and I don't want prayer in school and all that in public school. Private schools can do whatever they want. And Pastor Bob seemed to agree with me on that. And it surprised me. I expected him to take the opposing view, as Gary tends to, but Bob said that he wouldn't want Christianity taught in public school because as a pastor, he would be concerned about his kids being taught somebody else's idea of what Christianity is. So he wouldn't want that either. So I thought that was a bit of a victory for me in my own petty way. No, but I look forward to that. And then tonight at 10 p.m., please tune into Mansterdam. I've been invited to participate in the Christmas show. There is a surprise, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's supposed to be a surprise, and I was told in confidence by Peter White when I saw him on Monday, and I'll mention in a moment why I saw Peter on Monday, the great Peter White. But there's a very cool surprise planned for the opening of the show tonight, and longtime fans of the show, I think, will especially appreciate what the guys have planned. So make sure you tune into Amsterdam tonight. I'll be there, and a bunch of other guests as well, from what I understand. It'll be kind of like the Christmas show from a few years ago, where it's going to be a cavalcade of people, including myself, but a very cool surprise plan for the opening of the show. So make sure you tune into that tonight. Also, tomorrow night on IPM Nation 2 is the return of Chris and Johnny's LOL Factory. So there's a cool way to spend at least 90 minutes of your Christmas Eve. And I mention this because not only is that show's been on hiatus for, I think, over a year now, but they're finally back their Season 3 premiere tomorrow night on IPM Nation 2 at 8 p.m. Eastern. And about 25 minutes into the show, because the show was pre-recorded, about 25 minutes into it, they discuss a certain former member of the IPM Nation team and a certain former co-host on this show. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Chris Rose, and it's not Jen Coffey, but someone who used to sit next to me, and it's not Glenn R.J. Willett. Someone who used to sit next to me quite often on this show is discussed. You can figure out who it is if you're a longtime fan of IPM Nation in general. And I was laughing out loud as I was listening to their lampooning of this particular individual. So be sure to tune in for that. So Chris and Johnny's LOL Factory. The reason I saw Peter White Monday night was because we did on IPM Nation 1 the Retro Spectrum Radio Christmas special. It was, of course, Paul Cormier, the host, myself, Dan Randlett, who's been with IPM Nation really from the beginning, and Peter White was there. And we also got a surprise visit from Santa, by the way. I never saw Santa and Peter White together in the same room that night. Interesting. But so Pete was there for that. You can find that. Actually, we have it right on the on IPM Nation right now. If you go to ipmnation.com/RSR, our Christmas show, we had a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing another Retrospectrum Radio this coming Monday. Celebrity deaths of 2015 will be the theme. So that'll be fun, I guess. No, it's always a good time. So lots going on at IPM Nation. Let's get into some stuff. So, of course, I did post on Facebook that today I'll be on the show discussing what Christmas means to me and reflecting on the holidays and whatnot. But, of course, that's anyone who's been watching this show or listening to this show for a while knows that that's kind of a running joke I do every year. I have no intentions of doing any such thing. I'm going to talk about politics. I'm just not... don't get me wrong. I mean, I enjoy, as far as the holidays, I like to, I get to see my family and whatnot and spend time with them. And, I'll say hello to my Uncle Matt if he's watching, because I know sometimes he watches the show. And I'll get to see him on Christmas, as well as my cousin Eli. But I don't really get into the whole, I'm just not into, what am I going to do? Sit here and tell funny holiday stories from my child. I mean, come on. I should really just soon put a gun in my mouth. But no, I'm not into that whole aspect of it. I enjoy celebrating Christmas because I get to see my family. I don't enjoy really talking about it. You know what I mean? So if I forget to say it at the end of the show, I do hope everyone has a Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah, or I think that might have gone by already, or Happy Festivus, or I don't know, really, who cares? But I hope you, in whatever way you celebrate this Kwanzaa, I guess, have a good time, stay safe and all that. So if I forget to mention it later, I'll just say it now and get it out of the way, and now we can forget about it. Okay, so I have a theory. It's not a new theory. It's not a unique theory to me. But this whole Trump thing, by the way, new polling data today, Donald Trump continues to increase his lead over the other Republican contenders. And I still believe, I'm sticking with my prediction. Mark this down, December 23rd, 2015. Matt Connarton, a modern-day Nostradamus, said this. Of course, I've been saying it for months now, so really there's no reason to mark this date down. And I don't remember the original date that I said it, but I continue to believe I am correct. Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee, and Hillary Clinton will be the next president. Now, I have said that I'm about, if I had to put a percentage on it, I'm about 95% certain at this point that Donald Trump and his candidacy are legitimate, and that Hillary Clinton, I may be throwing the word legitimate around a bit loosely, and that Hillary Clinton will be the Democratic nominee, of course. But I've been about 95% that Trump's campaign is legitimate, and about 5% convinced. Well, not convinced, because if something's 5%, can you be convinced? But 5% open to the possibility, shall we say, as some have floated, not to sound conspiratorial, but about 5% open to the possibility that he is in fact a plant, and that he and the Clintons have a secret deal where He is to win the nomination, or at least contest for the nomination, in as ridiculous a way as possible to sabotage the Republicans so that Hillary Clinton can this time have a clear path to the presidency, as she was in theory supposed to have had in 2008, but was interrupted by a not even a one-term senator from Illinois with a funny last name. I am now going to change those numbers a little bit. I'm going to say I'm about, let's see, I'm going to say 88% convinced that the Trump campaign is completely legitimate, and about 12% open to the possibility that he is in fact a plant and has been secretly coordinating with the Clintons to sabotage the Republicans' chances of winning the White House in 2016. Now, first, let's examine the existing facts, and then I'll explain what new data has contributed to me kind of changing. And again, I'm only 12% open to the possibility. The other 88% of me still thinks this is all legit, and that Trump is just being uber Trump. But so up until now, here's what we do know. We do know that as recently as 2012, Donald Trump was saying complimentary things about Hillary Clinton. We do know that in a video that I think surfaced from 2011, not that long ago, Trump acknowledged that he tends to self-identify as a Democrat. We do know that there is a history of Trump being chummy with the Clintons, and that they were friends. And we do know that Trump has given money, apparently a lot of money. He has contributed to many Democrats over the years. So, and we also know that Trump has developed a penchant for saying everything that conservative Republicans want to hear. And that always makes me suspicious. That in and of itself makes me suspicious. When somebody tells you everything you want to hear, it's probably because they're pandering to you and they're trying to get your vote. So, I take all of that into account and am suspicious of Donald Trump. Now, here's what has happened that's new. You know, Donald Trump has said a lot of incendiary things. He certainly doesn't talk like any other Republican candidate or any sort of candidate would ever speak. Seems to like to insult everyone. As Jeb Bush said, Donald, you can't insult yourself to the presidency. But he can insult himself to the nomination, certainly. The more insulting he gets, the more incendiary he gets, the more his polls improve. Here's the newest thing. So there's been a couple of Democratic debates now where Hillary Clinton has been a little late getting back during the break. Because in the first one, I'm not sure it was the first debate. I think there's been 3 so far. I think it was the second debate that this actually happened. We just had the third one over the weekend. Hillary was a little bit late getting back to the podium when they were coming back from break. And she made a comment and said, sorry, it takes me a little longer, you know. And what was interesting about that was, you know, and the audience laughed, and it wasn't, you know, she clearly wasn't, she didn't seem embarrassed or anything. She just said, sorry, it takes me a little longer. And it was kind of a light moment. And people laughed, and everyone just kind of had fun with it. And what's interesting about moments like that is it sort of has a way of, to me anyway, my perception, it sort of humanizes her. Because, you know, one of the knocks on Hillary is, unlike Bill Clinton, she fails to come across as empathetic and human and being able to relate on a human level. Unlike Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton, a lot of people think is the single greatest politician of the modern era. I think they may very well be right. The most gifted in that way, in terms of how he relates, how he connects to an audience. You know, he's just very effective that way. And Hillary Clinton, to a large extent, does not seem to have those gifts. But it does have sort of a humanizing effect. And then in this last debate this past Saturday, this was a little awkward. They come back from the break, And one of the moderators, not Martha Raddatz, the other guy who I'm not particularly familiar with, said, we believe that Secretary Clinton will be coming around the corner any moment now. And they're waiting and they're kind of stalling. And finally, she's still not back. So it's just Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley on the stage. And they decide to start without her. They've waited too long. So the moderator then begins the next question. And then as he's asking the question, Hillary emerges on the stage. And there's applause. And she just kind of steps up to the mic. And very sheepishly, she just kind of says, "Sorry." And it was funny. It was genuinely kind of funny and kind of engaging and kind of charming, actually. Words that you would rarely use to describe Hillary Clinton. Even her supporters, I don't think, would normally describe her as that way. And again, it had kind of a humanizing effect. And, she's a woman, so maybe it takes a little longer and, whatever. But it was kind of funny. So Trump decides to pick on her about this. And don't worry, I'm getting to why. I'll circle back. I'm getting to why this whole thing makes me even more open. Again, not convinced. I'm still 88% sure this is all legit and he's just Trump. But I'm now 12% open to the possibility that he's a plant. And I'm getting to that. But let's examine Trump's comments, shall we? This is from Politico. Donald Trump says Clinton's bathroom break during the debate is too disgusting to talk about. And by the way, I know the Trump apologists will say, this is more the liberal media trying to make Donald Trump look bad. And yes, because that alleged liberal media, whenever they report on something Trump actually said or did, it's all just to make him look bad. Donald Trump used vulgar language as he attacked Hillary Clinton during a rally on Monday night, saying her use of the restroom at the last Democratic debate was, quote, too disgusting to talk about, and that in 2008 she got schlonged by Barack Obama when he defeated her in the Democratic primary. By the way, I was not aware that word could be used as a verb. Apparently it can. Standing before a crowd of 7,500, Trump recounted how Clinton was seconds late to the Democratic debate stage on Saturday night following a commercial break. Trump asked the crowd 4 times where Clinton had gone. Quote, "I know where she went. It's disgusting. I don't want to talk about it," Trump said, screwing up his face as the crowd laughed and cheered. "No, it's too disgusting. Don't say it. It's disgusting." Later in the night, Trump told the crowd that he could not picture Clinton as president because she never wins at anything. He then brought up the 2008 Democratic primary, which Clinton lost to Barack Obama. Quote, "She was favored to win and she got schlonged," unquote, Trump said, turning a vulgar noun into a verb. Trump has repeatedly faced criticism for the language that he uses to describe women, including his female rivals. During the first GOP debate in August, Megyn Kelly of Fox News brought up some of Trump's more controversial statements and asked him, quote, "Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who was likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women," unquote. Trump has called that question unfair and launched into a vicious attack against Kelly. During a CNN interview after the debate, Trump said of Kelly, quote, "You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her whatever," unquote. Trump later said he meant to say ears, but many assumed he was saying that Kelly was menstruating. I often make that mistake myself, by the way. I forget what this is, on a cold winter day when I don't wear a hat. Oh, my whatevers are just freezing. I hope I don't have frostbite. My whatevers. My goodness. This isn't the first time Trump has attacked Clinton using phrases that some of her supporters have labeled as sexist. In recent weeks, he has repeatedly commented on her pantsuits, said she lacks the stamina and strength needed for the presidency, and accused her of sleeping too much. This latest attack seems to be in response to a comment Clinton made about Trump during the Saturday night debate. She said the Islamic State terrorist group has used video of Trump's controversial comments on Muslims to recruit new members, a claim that has drawn questions and skepticism from fact checkers. She did lie about that, by the way. That was a lie. Trump demanded an apology, which Clinton refused to give. Let's see. I'm just skipping down because this kind of veers off into some other stuff. Okay. Well, that gets it out. If you want to read the whole thing, it's up at Politico. So here's why I'm now becoming more open to the possibility that Trump is a plant. This is so obviously playing right into the hands of his opposition. Okay, so he offends Hispanics, calling Mexicans rapists, even though Hispanics are the largest growing demographic in this country, and you can't win back the White House if none of them vote for you. So he offends Hispanics, he offends veterans with his comment about if you were captured, you're not a war hero. Who else has he offended? Well, he offends women. He's offended women at multiple turns, and this is the newest, right? What he's been saying about Hillary, which plays right into the hands of those who will once again start arguing that the Republican Party is waging a, quote, war on women. So either he's turning out to be the worst politician ever, or he is possibly a plant. Now, you can argue all you want that he can't be a bad politician. This is obviously all working. Look at his poll numbers. No matter what he does, in fact, it would seem not even necessarily in spite of it, but because of it, his poll numbers just go up and up and up. The conservative base of the Republican Party loves all this stuff. They love the insults. They love the degradation. They love it. Oh, Muslims. That's who else he's offended. I was trying to remember. Of course, that's an obvious one. He wants to keep out all the Muslims. They love this stuff. And they loathe Hillary Clinton. And they love watching Trump pick on her. So you may argue, no, he's a great politician. Look, he's given the base of the party what they want. And the more outrageous he gets, the better his poll numbers, the more he assures himself of the nomination. And you'd be right to say that. Yes, I'm absolutely convinced in February, New Hampshire, the first in the nation primary. Not so sure about Iowa. We can argue about whether or not Iowa even matters. But here in New Hampshire, the first in the nation primary, yes, Trump will win the nomination. If he keeps this up, the more he does it, the more they love it. He will win the nomination. He's going to win primaries after that. He will be the Republican nominee. I'm convinced of it. But you can't possibly win the general election offending everybody. Yeah, Republicans are going to vote for Trump. Democrats will vote for Hillary. Who are independents going to vote for? They're not going to vote for Trump. They're going to vote for Hillary. Because here's the thing. This particular mode of attack, attacking Hillary in this specific way, not attacking her on her record, not attacking her on Benghazi, not attacking her on this or that vote when she was a senator, none of that. Attacking her seemingly for being a woman, if you really break it down to its base, attacking her for being a woman. That not only does that turn a lot of people off and will discourage people from voting for Trump in the general election, but what else does that do at the same time? What's the other detrimental effect to Republicans that has? It also engenders sympathy for Hillary. It also, not only is he mobilizing and exciting the conservative base of the Republican Party with this, but what's he also doing at the same time, unwittingly, or seemingly unwittingly, unless it's intentional, he's also mobilizing and activating the liberal base and the women in the Democratic Party, who are going to be more fired up than ever for Hillary, because women feel like he is attacking them en masse. Liberal women and a lot of independent women. Republican women, no, they'll just go along with whatever. Oh, yeah, we love Trump. He's great. So what if he comes off as sexist and a jerk? You know, it doesn't matter. Republican women are going to support him if he's the nominee. But he is absolutely, what he is doing, I guarantee you, it is massively motivating the female liberal to moderate base of the Democratic Party. I have no doubt about that. So either he is just a really bad general election candidate, which he is. I mean, again, he'll be the nominee, but he's a terrible general election candidate. Or this is all by design. This is intentional. It's almost at a point where it's difficult to imagine how he could be damaging himself in the long term, as far as the general election, more than he already is. What more can he do? Is he going to show up at a future event wearing a wife beater? I don't know. A wife beater and maybe over that a suit coat with the Confederate flag sewn into the back of it. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do next. But I don't think it's going to stop, and he's never sorry about anything. And I'm telling you, I might even be, let's say 80% convinced he's legit and 20% open. As I'm thinking it all through, I think maybe there's a 20% chance, a 1 in 5 chance that Donald Trump is secretly working with the Clintons. And if Trump were to, although he said he won't, but if he were to run as an independent, of course, that will cost the Republicans the election. There's even talk of, if he is the nominee, of one of the other Republicans like Jeb running as an independent, with the idea being to save the party. And then if he wins as an independent, he'll then revert back to being a Republican. But no matter what they do, there's no getting around Trump. No matter what they do, Hillary will win. If you split the vote, Hillary wins, obviously. Hillary wins no matter what. It's perfect. If he is a plant and he is secretly working with the Clintons, it's perfect. They have done this perfectly. This could not have been executed any better. But we'll see. I mean, we're still, New Hampshire primaries in February. We'll see what happens. Let's see. In Kentucky, this will be very quick, but, when I mention Kentucky, who do you think of other than Rand Paul? Kim Davis, of course. Kind of an interesting development. This showed up last night from Politico. Kentucky governor strikes clerks' names from marriage licenses. Again, this is very brief, and I won't have much to say about this, but Kentucky governor Matt Bevin on Tuesday. I'm just excited for the holidays, I guess. Christmas. Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin on Tuesday issued an executive order requiring the state to omit county clerks' names on marriage licenses as part of efforts to safeguard residents' religious convictions. Bevin ordered the state's archives department to issue amended marriage license forms, the Associated Press reports. The order, one of 5 introduced on Tuesday, was the first the Republican governor has issued since entering office. The measure was pushed forward after Kim Davis, a clerk in Rowan County who gained the support of GOP presidential candidate Mike Huckabee, served 5 days in jail for refusing to grant marriage licenses to gay couples. Bevin said in the press release, quote, "Today I took action to uphold several commitments I made during my campaign so that we can implement real solutions that will help the people of Kentucky," unquote. In September, an ABC News Washington Post poll indicated that 74% of Americans said that legal equality should prevail over religious beliefs. The order is expected to go into effect immediately. That's a smart move. I think it's a good move. Kind of puts the whole thing to bed. By the way, I was not aware previously of this poll that was conducted a couple of months ago, but I think that's wonderful. 74% of Americans said that legal equality should prevail over religious beliefs. I'm firmly committed to the idea of separation of church and state. So as someone who is a fan of that principle and believes that it should be upheld, I am pleased to see that and encouraged to see it. Something else that popped up, I got to take a gulp of water here. I'm just so unleashed. I'm becoming parched. Plus, the cold air makes me, kind of dried out and thirsty, but it's not really cold out. This is thus far. We're having, I think today or yesterday, the first day of winter. Well, anyway, we're just getting into winter now, but wow, it's been warm. It's supposed to be here in the Northeast. They're predicting the warmest winter on record. So thank you, El Nino. Or global warming. Whoever's to thank for it. I do believe in climate change, by the way, and man-made climate change. I don't ascribe to the Republican idea that it's all just a massive conspiracy between the world's scientists and liberals to attempt to destroy capitalism. I believe man-made climate change is real. But anyway, getting back to this. This was on. This is from Reuters. Obama chides Republicans for lack of alternatives on ISIS. When you ask them, well, what would you do instead? They don't have an answer. And this is short, but the reason this caught my eye is, when you watch the Republican debate and when you watch the Democratic debates, there's a theme, a commonality between the Republican candidates and the Democratic candidates. Even Bernie Sanders, the uber liberal Bernie Sanders, the socialist, on foreign policy, even he comes off sounding like a war hawk and talks about we need to destroy ISIS and this and that, and I have ideas and I have a strategy and all this. They've all got an idea. They've all got strategies. And if you really pay attention to them, they're all very careful. I noticed this particularly with the Republican debate, the most recent one, and this theme carries over into the Democratic debate. They're all pro-war, except for Rand Paul, and they're all very careful to try to figure out ways to make their idea, however vague it may be, their ideas are often vague, you can't really get into specifics, and the reason they can't get in too much into specifics is because really none of them have any damn idea. But they all try to be specific enough so that their own idea sounds unique in some way. Because you have to sound like you have an idea that nobody else has thought of, that we can actually use to somehow defeat ISIS. I have the solution. I have the secret formula. Elect me. I can get it done. Nobody else knows, but my idea, yes, we will defeat ISIS. And they all do this because really none of them have a clue. And most of them are very reticent about saying, we're going to send in ground troops, because Americans don't want to hear that because we're war weary to an extent. But they all try to sound like they have an idea. And they don't. Obama doesn't. And again, not to sound conspiratorial, but I don't particularly think it matters. I don't think even if someone did have some sort of magical idea to get this done, that we'd ever see it implemented necessarily, because, I think a lot of this is intentional. The war on terror has to continue no matter what, because we're a war-based economy. You got to feed the military-industrial complex. But anyway, let's get to this. So this was written by Julia Edwards for Reuters. Obama said his administration is open to some legitimate criticism for failing to adequately explain its strategy to counter the Islamic State, though he chided Republican presidential candidates for criticizing his policy without offering an alternative. In a December 17th interview set to air on NPR at 5 a.m. on Monday, so that aired yesterday, Obama attributed his low approval ratings for how he has handled terrorism to the saturation of Islamic State attacks in the media after the November 13th attacks in Paris that killed 130 people. Obama noted that the U.S. has carried out 9,000 airstrikes against the Islamic State and taken back towns, including Sinjar, Iraq, from the militant group. Obama said of Republican candidates he has observed in televised debates, quote, when you ask them, well, what would you do instead? They don't have an answer, unquote. Kind of reminds me of Obamacare. The interview is one of the many recent attempts by the president to ease Americans' fears following the Paris attacks and the shootings by a radicalized Muslim group in San Bernardino, California. A national survey by the Pew Research Center found 37% of respondents approve of the way Obama is handling terrorism, while 57% disapprove, the lowest rating he has received on the issue. In his year-end news conference before leaving for a vacation in Hawaii, Obama urged Americans to stay vigilant against homegrown threats while not allowing themselves to become terrorized or divided, blah, blah, blah. There's more to that, but doesn't matter. The main point being, Obama's criticizing Republicans for not having an answer either. But, I mean, if you listen to the Republican debate, sounds like they all have an answer. They all have this unique solution that nobody else has. Hey, if you really love your country and you really know what to do, how about you take a trip to the White House and have a meeting with our president and tell him what your secret plan is? I mean, if you really love your country and you really want to defeat ISIS and you were really serious about it, you would do that, right? If you have the magic formula. It's like, I remember back before Trump even announced his candidacy, he would say at some of these events, I have a plan to defeat ISIS. I have a plan. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's top secret. He really said this. I was at a couple of events where he actually said this. I have a plan, but I'm keeping it top secret. When I'm president, I will implement it. And it's like, okay, BS. Number one, no, you don't have a plan. You don't have a top secret plan. And anyone who falls for that crap is just silly in the head. And number two, even if you really did have a secret plan, you shouldn't be here telling us, bragging to us about you have some sort of secret plan. You should be at the White House having a meeting with Obama and his foreign policy team saying, hey guys, have you thought about this? And telling them your plan and helping them defeat ISIS. It's silly. Rand Paul, the only person speaking any sense, I think ideally, while he has sort of bought into this whole we got to fight them there kind of thing, we got to fight them there before they come here, I think he says that because he knows that if he says we should withdraw completely from the Middle East, he'll be labeled an isolationist and whatnot, as his father was. But Rand Paul, certainly the most sensible out of anybody on this issue. I discussed that last week on the show. Rand Paul, the one Republican who seemingly would prefer to avoid a nuclear confrontation with the Russians. Even Hillary, by the way, see, the Democrats are just as dangerous. Hillary Clinton, at the debate Saturday night, was talking about establishing a no-fly zone over Syria, which some Republicans have supported as well, which during the last Republican debate, it was when Carly Fiorina, I believe, it was either her or Chris Christie was talking about the no-fly zone. And then you see Rand Paul on camera literally just shaking his head at how crazy that is. And then he points out, if you establish a no-fly zone over Syria and then you tell the Russians that applies to them too, and then they violate the no-fly zone, now you're obligated to shoot down that Russian plane. And if you shoot down that Russian plane, we're going to end up in a nuclear war. And if nobody minds, I personally would like to avoid global, this my words at this point, not his, but I personally would like to avoid a global thermonuclear Armageddon if nobody minds. That's really going to screw up my day if we have World War III and we're all dead. Just saying. So, I take back what I've said in the past about John Kasich being the least repulsive Republican. No, Rand Paul now to me is the least repulsive in the Republican field. John Kasich that night said, it's about time we punch the Russians right in the mouth. He actually said that. figuratively speaking, of course. I'm sure he's not going to actually approach Vladimir Putin and punch him in the face. But that kind of talk is really, really scary. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Speaking of war, a new poll shows Americans want the government to do more to fight terror. I'm going to skip down because there's a lot here. There's a lot of numbers here, a lot of information. I'm going to skip down in this article, though, because here's the part I really am concerned about. In the fight against the Islamic State, 52% said they would support sending ground troops to Syria, while 40% said they would not. So I assume the rest of that is people who are undecided. Of those who indicated support for ground troops, 52% they would send a significant number, while 39% preferred a limited number. The Pentagon sent 50 special operations forces to the country in November to advise, train, and assist local soldiers. Okay, this is troubling because obviously if more than half of the country supports sending in ground troops, we have not lost our lust for war. Look, the common sense, pragmatic approach here would be let's begin to pull back from the Middle East. Let's stop giving our enemies an excuse to radicalize. I'm not saying let's walk away from our treaties, not by any means, and I'm not saying let's walk away from Israel. I'm not saying let's walk away from NATO. I think we should honor whatever commitments we've made officially, legally, in terms of treaties, but these sectarian conflicts, we need to get out. We need to stop this. Stop the madness. But more than half of the country says, no, we got to keep sending our troops there. It's just madness. It's crazy. It just fuels the military-industrial complex. And what it really is, see, I'm noticing something. So when I have just casual conversations with people and I say, I think the libertarians are right. I think Rand Paul is right. We need to start pulling back because this idea that we need to fight them there or we'll have to fight them here is absurd on its face. We've gone off the rails here. We need to be smarter about this and, not keep doubling down, tripling down, but pull back and let them fight each other if they want. Because we created ISIS by invading Iraq. In casual conversations with people, nobody ever says to me, really, I can't think of a single instance where anyone's ever said to me, oh, that's crazy. We need to just keep sending in more and more and keep fighting. Most people will say something like, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right about that. And yet, we keep seeing this polling data that shows that when it comes down to it, Americans would prefer more war. It's just nationalism. It's jingoism. It's just, it trumps everything else. No pun intended. I'm just very sort of just cynical and discouraged about this because I don't think we're ever going to see an end to, what Ron Paul describes as endless war. Because Americans just want to keep fighting. And because the military-industrial complex has fooled everyone into believing that if we stop fighting over there, like I said, we'll have to fight them over here, or that is some sort of appeasement, that we're giving in, we're surrendering somehow if we don't continue to send troops into this meat grinder that is the Middle East and just keep feeding our brave young men and women into that to die for others to profit from war. They've fooled everybody. Let's see. Something, we still got a little bit of time, and I'm cruising right through these topics I wanted to discuss. But that's good, because I usually have a whole bunch of things I want to get to, and then I only get to half of it. This is, we're going to really shift gears here, because something that longtime viewers and listeners know that I'm very passionate about is the death penalty. I am opposed to the death penalty I loathe the death penalty. And, I really want to see it go away. I've been encouraged by, we're definitely going the right way on the death penalty in terms of polling data. More and more Americans are turning against the death penalty. Many of them oftentimes are conservative Republicans who at one time were pro-death penalty, but are starting to wake up to the idea that, look, if you're a conservative, part of what's endemic of your belief system is a distrust of the government. So, the government's ineffective, ineffectual, can't do anything right. So if you trust the government so little and don't think the government can do anything right, why would you trust that same government in this one instance? Oh, when it comes to convicting the right people and then executing them for murder, oh yeah, the government never gets that wrong. It doesn't make sense. So it only makes sense for conservatives to be opposed to the death penalty. But unfortunately, we're getting there. But a lot of conservatives are still in favor of it. Death penalty, not really that partisan an issue. The attitudes historically have tended to be Republicans more apt to support the death penalty, Democrats more apt to oppose it. But there's a lot of, on this particular issue, there's a lot of crossover in both directions. Like I said, more and more conservatives are coming around on this and now oppose the death penalty. But unfortunately, there's also a crossover in the other direction. There are still Democrats who support the death penalty, who are, in fact, our current president, Barack Obama, is pro-death penalty. Which probably shouldn't surprise anybody. He thinks it's cool to be killing lots of people with drones, even though the government, our own government, has acknowledged recently that 9 out of 10 targets killed in these drones were not the actual targets, innocent civilians and bystanders. Again, though, we got to keep fueling that hate so that we have an enemy to fight. Our military-industrial complex depends on it. Our war-based economy depends on it. But this is interesting. Kim Bellware writes this for HuffPost. And this is actually from, it was about a week ago this article went up, and I just hadn't gotten to it yet, but it's important to me. 2015 was a historic year for the death penalty in America. Fewer people were sentenced to death than at any time since the 70s. So let me read this. From papal speeches to street protests, death penalty news loomed large in 2015. Some states like Pennsylvania, Nebraska, and Connecticut informally halted or outright struck the practice from their books, while others like Texas and Oklahoma scrambled to keep their death chambers running, sometimes with disastrous results. A lethal injection procedure became the subject of a U.S. Supreme Court case, prompting one justice to write a dissent that all but invited a constitutional challenge to the practice. 6 people were exonerated from death rows around the nation, while the rate of executions overall dropped to its lowest level in almost 2 decades. Well, that's great news. The fewest number of people were sentenced to death in 2015 than in any year since the Supreme Court declared many state death penalty systems, quote, cruel and unusual, unquote. And capital punishment across America was halted from 1972 to 1976. Quote, 2015 has been a historic year in a number of respects, unquote, said Robert Dunham, executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, who wrote a year-end report on capital punishment released on Wednesday. A total of 28 executions were carried out this year in just 6 states, the fewest number of executions since 1991, Dunham notes in his report. Just 49 death sentences were handed down, a 33% drop from last year. Even states like Texas, Missouri, and Georgia, which are responsible for most of the executions this year, offer proof that the death penalty is in decline. Dunham told HuffPost, quote, the people they executed this year were sentenced to death in the 80s and 90s, unquote. He also said, quote, Montana, Virginia, and Georgia did not sentence anyone to death this year. And Texas only sentenced 3 people to death, unquote. That surprises me, by the way, about Texas only sentencing 3 people to death. Texas, death penalty capital of the world. They love killing in Texas. Rick Perry thinks it's great. You know, he can often be seen just beaming over how great that is, all the killing. George W. Bush, back in 2000 when running for president, when this came up in the debates, he seemed pretty happy about it. I remember a debate moderator asking him a question about public defenders falling asleep during trials, and Bush seemed to find great humor in it. Because of changes to some state laws, more defendants are receiving competent, taxpayer-funded lawyers, and, unlike in the past, jurors are being told that their sentencing options include life without parole. In the 1980s and 90s, Dunham said, quote, procedural safeguards were weaker for death penalty defendants, and U.S. hysteria about crime, unquote, was at a peak. He also said, quote, these are the cases that are coming up for execution now, and they're fraught with legal error, with bias, and are generally regarded as the least reliable convictions in death sentences that have been imposed, unquote. Justice Stephen Breyer wrote in dissent that it was, quote, highly likely that the death penalty violates the Eighth Amendment, unquote. Of course, the Eighth Amendment about, cruel and unusual punishment. The death penalty remains on the books in only 31 states, and even there, its application is wildly uneven. California's Riverside County alone accounted for 16% of all new death sentences in 2015. 3 states, Texas, Missouri, and Georgia, carried out 86% of all the executions this year, Dunham said. Together with Florida, those 4 states accounted for 93% of executions. Florida, that's another state where they're just wild about killing. They love killing in Florida. On the other hand, there are states with the death penalty on the books that rarely use it anymore. Kansas hasn't executed anyone since 1965. The growing cost of maintaining the death penalty was among the factors driving Nebraska to abolish capital punishment in May. Meanwhile, a dwindling supply of approved lethal injection drugs pushed some conservative states like Utah and Oklahoma to extreme measures of approving older or untested methods like the firing squad or the nitrogen gas chamber. Anti-death penalty activists rallied outside the Supreme Court on September 29th to try to prevent the execution of Oklahoma inmate Richard Glossip. This year, a death row inmate became not only a social media trending topic, but nearly a household name. Oklahoma death row inmate Richard Glossip was scheduled for execution 3 different times in 2015. He won last-minute stays from a court twice. On the 3rd attempt, the execution was called off when officials discovered they had the wrong drugs. That mix-up and the revelation that the Oklahoma Department of Corrections briefly considered using the wrong chemicals triggered a statewide moratorium on executions and the exit of at least 2 high-profile prison officials. Dunham said, quote, more than any other single state failing this during the year, Oklahoma's botch of the attempted execution of Richard Glossip underscored people's concerns about the inability or unwillingness of states to properly administer the death penalty, unquote. He pointed to Pope Francis's 3-day visit to the U.S. in September as another key moment. Francis, who had previously spoken out against the death penalty, told Congress, every life is sacred. Dunham said, quote, he addressed an issue that many people are concerned about, the basic inhumanity of the death penalty. The Pope's comments helped dispel the notion that there's such a thing as a peaceful and humane execution, unquote. By the way, good on Pope Francis. I've always said that I don't understand how people who call themselves Christians can be pro-death penalty. I cannot imagine that Christ would approve of executing people. Of course, Christ himself was executed by the state, it's worth noting. And most Christians, of course, as I often say, are what I like to call ironic Christians who try to actively have nothing to do with what Christ actually said. So it doesn't matter whether or not Christ would approve of executing people. A lot of Christians just think the death penalty is a great thing. And that's unfortunate. All right, we are about out of time, so I just want to remind everybody, of course, happy holidays and all that. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if you're watching live, I will be back at 6 p.m. with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper for our Christmas show. And, of course, Mansterdam tonight at 10 p.m., the Christmas special. I'll be here. A bunch of other people will be here. and they've got a really cool surprise for the opening of the show, so make sure you tune in for that. And other than that, I will see you all in 2016 for the next television edition 2 weeks from today. And that's it for now. I'll talk to you all a little bit later. Thanks, everybody.